Hey, Chris from the ISD, are you going to be the only one that's going to present, or do you have someone else?
I'm here too.
How's that, Deb?
Yep, I got on. How are you?
Oh, I see you. I see you doing good. Just getting ready here in a few minutes. I just saw Chris. I wasn't sure if you were going to be on or he had someone else.
Yeah, no, Chris is going to go first and then I'll go at the end.
Sounds good.
We made it all the way from Standish to Essexville and now here. We're pretty good in one night.
A lot faster than Dewey ever was.
I bet.
Did you have a meeting already today, Deb? Or no? When are your meetings?
We had it last Monday and we have it next Monday.
All right, so you're on different days.
Yeah,
But you're 4:30? What time do you do yours?
4 o'clock.
4 o'clock.
Yeah, Darren had his first one tonight. That was his first Zoom one.
Really?
Yeah, I was surprised too. It's always fun, watching it. It's always fun. But yeah, I don't know what they did last time. Maybe they didn't do one. I don't know.
Maybe he just did he did, because at one point you could still do an in-person one if you didn't have a certain amount of people, I think.
But yeah, he might have been able to get in there. That's true. Because he only does one a month, right?
Yeah.
Hi, Jay.
I'm like, who the heck is Denise Bliss? Just so you guys know, this is streaming right now. So
this is me, Dwayne.
gotcha. Yeah, gotcha.
We just waiting for Paul again. Is that the deal?
Paul, and then there's I've been in contact with the public comment, and they know that 7, but I mean, they're not. We'll keep an eye out for. I think they're going to join by phone, and the last 2 digits of the phone number should be 06. So her name is Tammy King.
All right, I've got 7 o'clock, so we'll call this meeting to order. I'd like to welcome everybody. Would you please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Okay, Mike Bauer,
Present.
okay, Jared Klimick,
Here,
Chris Rabish,
Here.
Paul Palmaville,
Here.
Nicole Jones,
Here.
Linda Anderson is here, and Mark Kuchar.
Present. Thank you. Again, I'd like to thank everybody for joining us, whether you're here in the meeting or out there in the virtual world. Do we have any additions, deletions, or changes to the agenda?
I would like to add to the consent agenda, item D, to approve the repeal of volunteer service hours for a graduation requirement of the 1920 school year as outlined in the high school handbook.
All right.
Support.
Thank you. Any other additions or deletions? Okay. If not, need a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
We have a motion. Is there support?
Support.
Gotcha.
All right. Any discussion? All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Motion carries. All right. Community comments. Jay, we have a Miss King.
She is not on, so do you want to just move on, and then if she pops on, we'll let her fit her in a spot.
Yeah, we can move it to the
Okay.
end of the meeting.
Okay.
And then if she doesn't come on, do you have her comment in writing or no?
No.
Okay.
But I reached out to her today just to verify that she had the information to join the meeting, and she indicated she did. So
Okay. Well, if she pops on, just let me know. Thank you.
Yep.
All right. Any other community comments at all? All right. We have a presentation from the Bay Aranac ISD. Mr. Frank?
All right, first I'll try audio. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
All right, that's good. And then I will try the presentation here. We should be good to go. Can everyone, just a minute, it's thinking. All right, how about now? Can everyone see my presentation?
Yep.
All right, good. All right, as we mentioned earlier, last year, I think I did Standish at 5 and it was down for you at 7 o'clock. And this year we were able to, by the power of Zoom and Google Meet, we were able to fly over to Estes Garber. Plus last year, all you got was me. And this year you get me and the boss. So 2 for 1 this year. So I guess good or bad, that's what you're getting. So starting off on the first slide here, this has been around for 15 years. We did present this preliminary budget to our board at their April 20th meeting, and then we presented to the superintendents on April 24th. You can see by May 1st, we have to have it to you as locals, and then during the month of May, you have the chance to approve or disapprove of our general fund budget. We do also present our special ed and voc ed budget just because of the size of those operations at the ISD level and the number of students you send to those programs. So this next slide does sort of break through the funds. Obviously, the big 3 I just mentioned. We'll get into those in more detail in a little bit. We also have 2 debt service funds. We had done some expansion on the LLC Aranac campus several years ago. That debt is coming off the books. This will be the last payment this year, so that'll be nice. We have 7 more years of debt service at about $250,000 a year over at the Career Center for some work that had been done there about 13 years ago. And lastly, we do have a capital projects fund for some special ed projects that are being planned. Right now, we have $500,000 set aside for that. Going back to those top 3 funds. Before I do that, what do we know? Similar to your budgets, we do know that our health insurance cap went up 3.3%. That goes up in January. So with a blended rate, 2.7% increase for the year. We are a cap district. That's about $90,000 to us. We do know that the base, I call it the base rate of MEPSers, which is what at the ISD we still have 80% of our employees at that, is 0.71%. That's going to cost us another $106,000 across the entire organization. We do have 4 of our 6 contracts settled for 21. They were multi-year contracts, so those are obviously all established going into next year. What we don't know is the other 2 contracts, which are currently being negotiated. but we have a pretty good idea where we hope to land in that, and that's what we have budgeted for. The big variable is that second bullet there, Medicaid revenue. With all this COVID going on, a big part of Medicaid is when those ancillary staff mainly can see kids and log Medicaid claims. We've gotten a lot of assurances from MDE about how they're going to handle a lot of things, but this involves the federal government, so it just adds another layer. So we're not certain if that's going to be an impact to us, with the loss of those visits, if that's going to impact our Medicaid revenues going into next year. So we've been pretty conservative with those figures on our budget for next year. Property taxes is obviously the other big variable. We don't anticipate a big impact for next year because the assessments had already come out right before this COVID-19 occurred. So we did see a 1.7% increase between Bay and Aranac counties. First nice increase we've had in a while, and I'll have a graph to show that in a little bit. But we are keeping an eye, obviously, on a year from now. We don't know how this COVID-19 is going to play out with property values. A lot of people have said they shouldn't be a huge impact, but you just never know. So as we'll see later on, some of our funds would be impacted by that more than others. So we are definitely keeping an eye on that going forward. This does give you a breakdown. If you go back to 2010 on the left side, that was the high point of taxable values between the two counties, almost $3.6 billion. And at the bottom, you see that was $17.7 million across the three big funds. It dropped to a low point in fiscal year 18 where we lost $1.7 million compared to that high point, and that is spread across the three funds, but specifically in voc ed and special ed, fairly large drops. We've been seeing a rebound for the last 3 or 4 years, so that nice increase is nice, not only for us as an ISD, but for the school aid fund statewide. So we're hoping that increase will continue, although we might see a little hiccup again with the impact of property taxes potentially from COVID. But you can see we're still down almost $1.3 million in the bottom right corner there from that high point in 2010. So, again, that really impacts the voc ed and special ed funds and the services, that we are the funds that we can devote to those countywide programs. The next slide gives a brief rundown of the general fund revenue sources. So top line, property taxes, only 5% of our general fund is funded by property taxes. So this fund wouldn't be impacted that much by the property tax issues I've been talking about. You can see pretty even funding across various sources. The largest funding source is near the middle there, $5.5 million, about 40% of our budget in early childhood grants. The majority of that is GSRP programs, which are located in your local districts and in other community organizations. So we largely pass through those funds. At the bottom, you see about $13.7 million budget in both revenues and expenses. Basically about a break even, $4,700 in the whole projection right now. That would leave us with a 16% fund balance in that fund. So not doing too bad there. When we talk about the general fund, 13.7 million expenses, this next slide, I tried to break down the various, the major programs that includes. The top one we just talked about, the GSRP grant, 4.6 million, a little over a third of our budget. The second and fourth line items are the adult ed. That's a big part of our general fund budget. Even though those programs are located, mainly at the Career Center, they are actually general funded. So that's another almost a third of our budget there. The third line item is the last, large item, 1.9 million instructional services. Besides the regular instructional service staff that we've always had, that number is quite a bit larger from previous years because of some significant grant funding that allows us to do some initiatives in both, ISD wide. $500,000 of that's the Marshall Plan almost. Another $250,000 of that is early literacy coaches, which we have roaming around the two counties. It also includes some My Blissy funds and 31N, which is some mental health funds that we were able to do some ISD-wide services with. So that's why that number may look a little bit larger than you might anticipate. From there on down, you'll see a lot of the overhead and operating type divisions at the bottom that are going to be spread across all three funds, and that's the general funds portion of that. Special ed fund, going back to sources of revenue, want to point at that top line again. Property taxes is 40% of our special ed fund. So we obviously will be keeping an eye on those property values because that does impact the special ed fund and the programs that we run out of there much more to an extent that general fund does. If you go down few line items. Section 51 state aid. That's where we get reimbursed for a certain percentage of our costs in special ed. So the state funds us about 20% of our budget. And then the second line from the bottom, IDA flow through, is the federal funds. That's the major federal source of funding, 18%. So between those three line items, that's 80% of our budget in special ed. You see 23.1 million of revenues, 23.2 right below that million in expenses, $24,000 deficit in that budget. So again, pretty close to break even. And that fund would have a 20% fund balance, which will help out with. We know we have some capital outlay needs coming up in the future that we may have to use some of those funds for going forward. The programs in special ed. When we talk about a $23 million budget in special ed, I broke this one down into three major areas. See that top area? It's called countywide programs. That's the countywide classrooms, whether they're at LLC, Bay, and Aranac, or the programs that are located in the locals, such as, I know we have some programs in your district and as well to around the county. So it includes all those programs that we fund in that top section. That's about 40% of our budget right there. The middle section is then the ancillary services that are given to kids countywide. It's the speech therapist, the social work psych. Deb will go into a little more detail about the staff that you have located in Pinconning in this area. That's about half our budget when you take all those positions around the entire ISD. Then the last 10% again is the administrative operating type expenses like building and grounds, HR, finance, and so on. Last slide for me, Voc Ed Fund is about a $10 million budget. Obviously what sticks out when you look at that is the top line item, almost 2/3, 63% of our budget is the property tax levy. So any property tax impacts this fund more than any other. So, it's taken a hit over the years, but we've always had the fund balance to be able to not have to make any major changes in that fund. And we hope to be able to do that going forward with that, if there were to have any small drops in property tax values. Between that line item and the bottom line item, Perkins Grant, that's the federal funds for CTE. It's about 3/4 of our revenue. So obviously it's a big part of our budget in those two line items. You see this fund, a little over 10 million in revenue, 10.1 out. So it's $96,000 deficit. A large part of that is we are having to replace some air handler units in that building. Some of the original equipment from that building that's met the end of its life. So over the next 4 years, we're going to have to do one room each year. And so that's a large part of that deficit. And you see we have a 26% fund balance. We may have to eat into that for this project to take care of that over the next several years. With that, before I turn it over to Deb, just want to see if there's any questions. I know I flew through this pretty quickly, but if you have any questions, I can always flip back to a prior slide if you want. But I'll open up for any questions at this point from my portion.
Any questions for Mr. Frank?
All right, I will turn it over to Deb then.
Okay, thanks, Chris. So if you look at this list, what we've done here is we've broken down really the specifics of how our budget is impacted by Pinconning area schools. So if you look down the list, we start with GSRP. There are about 48 students that are receiving services in GSRP programs that are around in Pinconning, but also across the ISD. If you look at the Career Center students, we have 128 students that are enrolled in the variety of programs that we have at the Career Center. As Chris said, we're very lucky that we have a substantial millage to be able to provide Career Center students the programs that they have at no tuition cost to the districts or to the families or the students themselves. So we've been very pleased about that. The next one is talking about students from Pinconning that are in center-based programs or EI programs. So there are 48 students. Those programs, several of them are at Linwood. We have some in your Pinconning High School area, but some of them might also be going into other programs in other parts of the districts and need to be transported there. If you look at that, of the 41 students that are in center-based programs, it's a very positive thing for us and significantly helpful, that Pinconning transports some of those kids. To go from Twining to Essexville is a pretty long distance to haul students. and getting help from the districts for students that reside in their areas is hugely helpful. If you look at Imagination Library, we have 3,205 kids that get Imagination Library books sent to their homes. And also, we've talked in the past about Math in the Mail. Those are some math kinds of kits that also go to the families in the mail to be able to work with the students as they go. Chris, okay, thanks. So if you look at this, this breaks down the services that are specific to Pinconning for students that are included in general education classrooms in your variety of buildings. And so it shows school psychologists, speech pathologists, occupational therapists, teacher consultants, social workers, other health related, which is more physical therapy, audiology, anything like that. Also some behavior specialists for students to work on issues before hopefully they go into the EI classrooms. And then we have a special education administrator who travels from Standish, Pinconning, Aubrey, and the Urinette campus. So that's a split across all those areas up north. I didn't want to forget some of the other things that are not quite as huge on the radar as far as financial things, but are significantly important to us. Instructional services is a big part of what we do. Mr. View, along with your principals, are all active in our curriculum council meetings, working with the literacy coaches, literacy rounds, doing things in the various buildings, which we believe are significantly helping the students, but we could only do those kinds of things with the support from the administrators in the district. We have a home visitor program where we have staff that will go into the homes and work with families when children are too little to be able to come to school, even our early childhood programs that start at age 3, and so they do that. We also provide services at the juvenile home in Bay County. We have a full-time teacher and a full-time instructional support staff there that works to assist the students who are assigned there for shorter periods of time to be able to keep their work going and do those kinds of things to be able to get back to their schools. We did just find out recently, I can't remember, Chris, how long it's been, maybe a month or two, that we're going to be expanding those services because the state is requiring that educational services be provided in the jails. If younger adults are there who have not received a high school diploma, a GED, or a high school completion of any kind. We're not really sure how that's going to work yet. That's just something that we're trying to investigate, but by fall, we're supposed to be looking at those kind of things too. I should mention, and that's always kind of interesting to me, how funding works across things. I'm not originally from Michigan. I've been here 10 years, but I came from Indiana. We received in my local district where I worked just about the same amount of money from the federal government for programs as we receive as an ISD, and we only had about 6,500 kids. So it's a little shocking to me that the funding doesn't flow evenly across the districts, and it causes a very difficult issue across states and programs to be able to fund the kinds of services that we need for students. And so it's been a difficult time. But we'll see how things are going, and we just keep going forward and doing the best we can with all of that. I don't know if you have any questions on those things.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions? All right. Thank you for your presentation.
No problem. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, Mike.
Next on the agenda is the consent agenda.
I'd like to make a motion to accept the consent agenda and pay bills totaling $360,675.90.
We have a motion. Is there support?
Support. Sorry, I had it on mute.
All right. So we have motion and support. Any discussion? Seeing none, need a roll call vote.
Okay, Mike Bauer,
Yes.
Nicole Jones,
Yes.
Chris Rabish,
Yeah.
Paul Palmaville,
Yes.
Jared Clement,
Yes.
Linda Anderson, yes. Mark Kuchar,
Yes.
7-0.
Thank you. Motion approved. Communication, Mr. View.
Thank you, Mr. Kuchar. Got a long agenda here, but should be able to get through it pretty quickly. District satisfaction surveys. Every spring we give out surveys to our constituents. We do it with our staff. We've gotten some feedback already, and if you read my newsletter, we've gotten quite a bit of positive feedback on some. We added some questions this year about how they thought we were doing with the pandemic and communication, because we definitely want to make sure our stakeholders are getting the information they need. And obviously, we got some constructive criticism, which we expect, but for the most part, a lot of positive things about our staff going above and beyond, reaching out to students, delivering meals, delivering packets. So just to give the board some feedback, I believe the direction that you led us in has helped. And for the most part, I think our parents are, they're working through this with us. And we're trying our best to get them what they need. But from what I'm getting in these surveys, it sounds like they're understanding that this is a new thing, but also, this also incorporates the first 2/3 of the year where we were in session, like other types of things, not just the pandemic. So I'll share those results with the board like I always do. And those surveys normally drive some changes that we'd like to implement. Any questions on those? All right. The Linwood Elementary Principal District Curriculum Director and Grants Coordinator. Put that out there. I've been trying to, we had talked about possibly a committee meeting, but in the context of trying to set everything up, I've been trying to streamline it. I did put in the board packet the posting. There's some changes a little bit to what Mark's currently doing. It would not have the assistant superintendent title. It would not have the district testing component. So there'd be a reduction in some of the duties. And for the most part, it would still be it's going to be a pretty large job, but it's going to be dialed back a little bit. And also this potentially would be an administrator who would be in our administrative union. Did anyone have any questions about the posting? It was in the packet. It's it's pretty, basically they're going to run Linwood. They're going to look to run our grants and coordinate our curriculum. And I do have a couple applicants already. So, some people are looking to take a challenge upon themselves. And so I will definitely be looking for a board member to be on this committee for when we get when we do the interviews. So possibly someone that heads up personnel or someone who wants to be part of it. I guess I will seek volunteers, or I can reach out. Mark, how do you want to go about that? You got any ideas?
I guess we can see who's interested. Who's on the personnel? Chris, is that you?
Yes.
All right. And you're the chair?
I'm not positive, but I believe so.
Okay. So I think Chris is an option. I could possibly do it too, but you can reach out to the members and see who's interested, but I have no issue with whoever wants to do that.
Yeah, Chris is the chair of personnel. Chris, would you be interested in sitting in on those interviews?
Yes.
Okay, so Chris will be our board rep when we get those in. It's probably going to be another 8 to 9 days. I think we had a 10-day posting. So once we get those together, we'll get a committee together.
Mike, what's your idea for the testing portion that Mark used to do?
A lot of it's going to be at the building level, because a lot of that testing now has changed somewhat, because like with M-STEP, the buildings are already doing a lot of the ordering on them for themselves. And it's kind of gravitated away a little bit, but some of the things like AP testing may have to go to the building as opposed to Mark, that position overseeing those things.
Okay.
But I would think some of that has already kind of come back. Mark, would you agree that some of the testing has kind of gone back to the buildings?
Yeah, I think it's more easily administered at the building level.
Mr. Furman?
Yeah, and I think I agree. I think the buildings have taken, especially with the MME and some of the PSAT testing the buildings have taken over. There are some district things that we'll need to make sure that are taken care of, but we have people in place that can make sure that that's done and completed.
Okay.
Any other questions about that? And we're also looking at potentially, and this would be through budget, but Mr. Furman we'd like to at least have Mr. Furman contracted for a short time as far as transitional period to work with this person because of the scope of the position. But again, that'll go to the budget committee or the personnel. But it would be a short-term situation where Mark could work with this person, get them lined up in the roles that they currently have. And I would highly recommend we do that because it is a pretty sensitive position. But the board will be presented with a proposal on that. All right, next one is kind of doom and gloomy, but it's also, there's a lot of different scenarios running around out there. I put in the board packet a memo from the state superintendents, the state school board, and the business officials. And they're looking at our budget for next year, or the state budget potentially being down over $1 billion to $1 to $3 billion next year. And as you know, our budget is driven by the state budget when it comes to sales tax. So even though we've been trying to reduce the committee work, I am going to work with budget committee to get some scenarios put together. But if you read through the budget, they're talking about running different scenarios between $200 a loss to almost $700 per student. And if you were to take $600 to $700 off per student and throw in a small student loss, you're looking nearly $1 million of our budget. So it's an eye opener, and we don't know what the federal government's going to do, but we're going to have to plan for some scenarios that don't look very good and hope for the best. And Chris and I have already kind of been looking at some of these things. It's, everyone's just trying to brace. I mean, back in the 2011, when they cut $470 per student, we had almost 9 months to kind of digest that. Well, this is only going to be less than 3 months before school starts next year. So it's going to take some real decision making in a hurry on this. And so I'll meet with budget. We'll come to the full board with some ideas, and then we'll have to then scope it out when we get more information. But Chris, do you have anything to add to that?
I've been sitting through a lot of conferences trying to get a better handle on this. The basic thing that we're hearing is that nobody really knows. We're going to have to plan our budget without really knowing. We're sure there's going to be a reduction in our state aid, but to what extent we probably won't know until, I would guess, November, after the state finally sets their budget. If they let us know ahead of time, of course. We do have some insiders at the state as an education system. The consensus revenue is on Friday, and then there's a conference on Monday to discuss that. So we're hoping to get a little bit better handle on it following that meeting at the state in Lansing on Friday.
Any questions about the budget cuts or anything that you've been hearing? I know Mr. Kuchar has had some input at Saginaw, and I think he's hearing similar stories. Would that be correct?
Absolutely. Last I heard is definitely $700 a student is where they look like they're going to go based on the projected numbers in the aid fund, school aid fund. So it definitely does not look good.
Yeah, and like I said, it could depend on a federal stimulus. I know they're talking a fourth stimulus, but
yeah, depends how much the feds get involved.
In Ohio, the one thing is, in Ohio, they just recently they're cutting their current year budget, so they're trying to trim, like, I think it was $300 million from now until the end of their school year, then have additional cuts next year. So I'm hoping that Michigan doesn't look to follow that, because we're pretty much planted in a budget and we're being told to pay certain individuals and budget a certain way. I'd hate to get a proration at the end coming up this year, but we'll keep on top of that and we'll keep the board informed. And if you hear anything through your associations, let Chris and I know, and we'll try and look it up, try and at least see if we can track down that type of lead or whatever information you have. Any other questions? All right, construction projects. The good thing is we had the pre-bid meeting for the asbestos and the tile. And, as we talk with our budget committee, we are going to I'm going to ask them if we want to proceed with these projects. I would think the ones that we have already lined up would be things we could do, but yet not take on any new projects, because we do have the tile and the asbestos bids are out. And I think that project was about $140,000 between the abatement and the tile. And I know we had some other smaller projects that I'll be discussing, but we're only going to do the ones that are the highest priority at this point.
Right.
Number 5 is going to get us probably the most input, year-end activities. Had a little bit of dialogue. Kyle's welcome to chime in, Mr. Kuchar, Mr. whoever else. I know Mark sent an email out. Our year-end activities, we talked last time about a June 3rd date for commencements, depending on what the state did. Well, we now know that May 28th is now the stay-at-home deadline. If you looked in your board packet, we had I put in there the governor's 6-point plan. I believe we are currently in the number 3 in the flattening stage, which when it comes to gatherings, there are no gatherings. And that, and not until number 4, which is improving, do you get small gatherings. I guess a couple of things. We're going to move forward on the senior awards night. I talked to Kyle that is going to have to be a virtual type of environment. Unless the board thinks there's really, if we want to do it before school ends, it's going to have to be virtual. I know Kyle's talked about maybe taping it, possibly. Again, these are all just scenarios. Potentially taping it with a small group of our staff, announcing the names, announcing their scholarships, and maybe putting a picture up of the student with a list of their accomplishments, and allowing that to be taped and then shown like 7 o'clock on the night that we would be doing it. So any ideas on a virtual senior awards night? Any input that you?
So I like that idea, and also maybe if you're recording it, maybe you could post it on your Facebook page as well, just so as many people as possible could see it and they could get that acknowledgement and recognition.
Okay. And this would kind of, and again, we're open for suggestions, but Kyle mentioned if they tape it with Mr. Stoneback, Kyle, Mrs. Palmerville, it wouldn't really be where the kids would have to be in a big Zoom meeting. It would be, Johnny Smith, here, list of his accomplishments,
Right.
put them on the screen, and then would you be open to something like that? Because I think it'd be really hard to manage if you did 83 kids on a Zoom meeting trying.
Right.
Yeah.
That's unrealistic, I think.
I think what you presented is a good option.
Yeah.
Mr. Woodruff, you want to input it? It was your and Danielle's idea, I believe.
Yeah, no, you pretty much summed it up. We just thought that it would be better to, record it than provide the link on the night that it was supposed to be, because like you said, there's a lot of things that can happen when you have 83 people on a Zoom meeting and you try to interact. If I try to pass it off to Mr. Stoneback, it gets cut up and it just doesn't look very good, or doesn't seem like very professional. So I figured just taping us on the stage like we normally would, running through that, having a little recognition in the back. And I think that's the best we can do, especially if we want to keep the timeline to be the same. So.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody else have any input on senior awards? All right, commencements. I've gotten a couple ideas on this. We've heard from students that they'd like to do this, sooner rather than later, meaning I think in June at some time would be a preference. But I'm trying to trying to get my arms around this. I would recommend tonight in our meeting that we at least pick a date. I think the 3rd is unrealistic. I think we shoot for the 25th and either do it virtually or something something potentially, I think it was Mr. Bauer had mentioned, maybe just schedule an appointment, make sure they can come to the stage, walk across the stage, then schedule, have it scheduled to where they can actually physically get their diploma, get a picture, and then exit out, get in their vehicle and move on. Any other ideas?
Yeah, Mike, I'd like to get the board members. I know a few of you contacted other people, and I'd like to hear the feedback you got, because I contacted probably 10 different families, and I got some interesting feedback. So I'd like to hear what any of you heard back from your parents or graduates.
I talked to probably 10 different families, and all of them said that they want to see something happen. Whether the more important thing was not when it happened, it was that ceremony would take place. They threw out suggestions, maybe letting the kids, the seniors, vote what they would like to see. One parent did suggest maybe reaching out to Dow Diamond, because Midland Public Schools did postpone their commencements till July, and Dow Diamond is letting them use their facility. It was a bigger place, so they figured they could practice the social distancing better and that type of thing. They were all for limiting attendance if need be. There were some concerns with split families, how we would work that if we limited attendance. But the majority of them do want to see something happen, and their kids want a ceremony.
And you, when you say they want something happen, they want it in person, not virtual.
Correct. They did suggest that, the virtual was a good idea if we are limiting how many people can attend, still have like a live stream going or something so other people can join in and see that.
All right. Anybody else? Okay. I had about the same thing. I actually talked to one or two people that Jared did too, and that's what I got. And I talked to, I think, 4 out of the top 10 seniors, and they're pretty broken up about this, more so than I anticipated. They had a lot taken away from them, and they really want to do something in person. They did want to do it as soon as possible, but that was under the guise that it would be in person. So they're willing, at least the ones that I talked to, the families, is to do something in person, even if it's later, going into August, having that hope, that last ceremony. And some of the parents said kind of what Jared alluded to is, even if we can just get the graduates there and just show something virtually, as much as the parents would want to be there, they'd be willing not to attend if it meant their kids could still have a normal ceremony. So kind of some of the thoughts that I did is, I think Mike or myself or both need to maybe contact our representatives and Whitmer, and people are allowed to go out to parks and to stores and wear their masks and have their hand sanitizer. And if we can, practice the same type of social distancing, can we get something out at the bleachers, or whether it's outside or inside? I think we got some more questions to answer. I before talking to all these parents, let's just go ahead and give them their graduation night virtual, and let them move forward, put it behind them. But it was clear to me that these people want their camaraderie and their friendships to happen, and to have that be their last image of high school, as opposed to clearing out their lockers and missing out on baseball and soccer and prom and senior awards, all that stuff. So that was the feedback that I got.
Yeah. I just want to just say something very quickly. So there was a webinar with MASSP last week, and they wanted districts to be very careful because students are not allowed on campus. Doesn't matter 6 feet apart, 7, whatever. Students are not allowed to be on campus. So I know other school districts are doing all types of things, but the MASSP, they said that you're going to open up yourself to litigation if something were to happen, if somebody gets sick, and then they can link it back to it was because of the gathering that Pinconning High School had. So just keep that in mind as we move forward and start brainstorming.
Yep. I appreciate that, Kyle. Thanks. And the one thing that I know about the executive order is that that suspension was through the end of the school year. So I guess the question I would ask on that is that in perpetuity, or if our scheduled classes were supposed to be exams on January or June 3rd, then if we meet at 6 o'clock, 6:30 on June 3rd, in other words, after the school year, then would that still apply? So I think that's another question we would have to have answered.
Yeah, and based on the conversation that I had with them, it's still encouraging a gathering that is not considered essential, because that's
okay.
While commencement is important, it's not an essential. It's not an essential thing or service that we're providing. So I know we're going to probably have to talk to our lawyers and everything like that, but because there is still a lot of unanswered questions about it. But I just know that through the conversation that I had with them, that's just what they told me.
Yeah, and Kyle and I both listened to that webinar, and they were very and again, MASSP is the principals group, and actually some of the other groups were present in the webinar, but they were saying that the later it's going to be. They showed the models in the potential spike if we go back to our normal living. You're going to probably see a spike, which is going to lead to more mitigation. And they were thinking it would be definitely later rather than sooner, as far as when you could hold a in-person gathering for commencement. So if we want to do any type of they're thinking it would be late in July, potentially, like you said, Mark, August, because of the way that curve looks and the flattening of the curve. And because like I said, the next step is still small gatherings. Which I don't know if that would be considered, even what we're thinking is a small gathering, or if we would have to be in that fifth phase, which is larger gatherings. So I just think tonight we push it to the 25th and tell parents that we're gonna try to put something together, or we go even later. I mean, we just definitely got to let them know it's not going to be the 3rd.
Yeah. So what's the pleasure of the board as far as guidance for Mike and his administrative staff?
At this point, I feel like it's kind of hard to give guidance about, how we can gather, how we can do this, because it depends on, everything's up in the air. It depends on what ends up happening and what the governor decides to do. I mean, pushing it back, I think, is the first step. They need to have that information so they can know. But as far as planning on what we're going to do, I mean, if we're going to plan on doing something virtual, then that's fine. We can go ahead and plan that. But if you're planning on trying to do something in person, we really can't plan on that yet because we don't know what's going to be.
Correct.
But it sounds to me like the board and the people who have given input want a face-to-face. They want.
Right.
So that's going to definitely drive us to the 25th as a decision. That's going to, because some districts have put in 2 contingency dates out, June 25th and July 25th. I mean, we could simply tell our parents we are not going to have commencements on June 3rd. We are going to tentatively have it on June 25th until we have more information. We will look to continue to make this an in-person ceremony. That would be our 2 decisions. Is number 1, we're canceling the 3rd. We're postponing so we could make it a person and not a virtual commencement. Is that, you okay with that, Mark?
Yeah. Is anybody uncomfortable with delaying it from the 3rd to the 25th at this point? no matter what
Right.
capacity it's in.
I don't think we have an option. I think we kind of have to at this point.
Yeah. Yeah, to try even giving it in person, yeah.
Right. Well, and yeah, the only way we could do it on the 3rd is if we did something virtual.
Yeah. So, yeah, we could cancel it on the 3rd and we can schedule it for the 25th. And once we get more information closer to that date, we may say, yes, we can go, or maybe at that point we give a last ditch date that, hey, July 25th, the graduation is going to take place, whether it's virtual or in person. And I'm fine with that.
Right. I think we should, move ahead with the 25th, and then, even like, and maybe we could do something that would be in person. Like you mentioned something about them coming in, making appointments or something, or maybe having it staggered so that they can, maybe just the kids and their parents could come in the gym, whatever, walk across the stage. There could be a photographer there to capture the moment so they could have that and they could still be given their diploma in person. Very limited, obviously, not a big gathering of people. So I don't know if that's something that would be allowable, but again, maybe we can reach out to, people have been asking the governor questions, and she's been listening and answering a lot of those questions. So
she has a senior herself, I think.
Right,
I believe.
exactly. So I'm just wondering, if we can like kind of reach out and.
I did have a parent email when I was on the phone, somebody in Lansing that has been on their weekly meetings with Chamber of Commerce and things like that. So she did email to see if they could give any insight, if they knew anything, what the governor's plans could be or what districts would be allowed to do. And she said she would let me know right when she heard back.
Okay.
And I think and I can follow up too, and I can email the governor because she's actually been pretty receptive, like you said, to answering questions. I think one of her responses is going to be, it's going to depend on the virus, because I know right now if we start relaxing the stay at home, it's going to probably have a little bit of a bump in that curve. I did get a message, and I think Darren forwarded this through to the board members. So we had a public comment after the fact of the board meeting last year, and that parent wanted to get it over with, and because kids wanted to move on and that type of stuff. Just wanted you to kind of reiterate that was just one person. Okay.
Okay.
But as far as like you said, Nicole, we can reach out to the governor and see what her thoughts are on those types of gatherings, and if she gives us more direction, then great. Anybody else have questions? Or?
So I think you have your direction, Mike, as far as canceling on the 3rd. We'll propose the 25th, and we'll try to do it in person, and then have to make decisions further down the line as opposed to what can happen.
Okay, perfect. I really appreciate the input. I mean, to go out and ask our constituents and the students, I think that helps making the decision, and it's going to be, it's really for them, definitely. It's their ceremony.
Right.
Evaluation is one of the orders, the executive orders has kind of relaxed evaluations for teachers, administrators, and superintendents. And I just wanted to let you know that I'm not asking you to make a decision tonight, but there's a possibility that we could save some trees as far as evaluation. If I know in the past sometimes we've made a lot of copies in regards to my evaluation, but for this year we can relax it, and you could simply waive some of the requirements that we've done. You can give me an effective rating. We move on until next year. Like with the teachers, we are only doing tenured teachers or probationary teachers, teachers that may have been on an improvement plan, or teachers who may have been going toward an improvement plan. So those are the only people that we're really going to finish out their evaluations. Talk to the teachers union, they're good with that. And then the same with the administrators. So it doesn't say you don't have to do them. It says you can relax how you do them, because the data, the growth, and all the things that the state requires isn't going to be there this year.
Right.
So next meeting, we can talk about how you want to handle my evaluation, because mine's not due until June 30th, while some of the administrators and teachers are due long before that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, the only good news I can throw at, well, there's some good news sprinkled in here, but the CARES Act, which is the year and ESSR funds, the district received, is going to receive $221,000. And those things can be spent on things like Title I type things. It's a one-time money. You can spend it on, we can spend it on devices. We can spend it on things that really improve instruction, technology, those types of things. Mr. Furman, did you want to throw in a few? This would be one of the grants Mr. Furman manages.
Yeah, we, and I spoke to Chris today, and there's like a lot of other things this day and age, there are a lot of unknowns, but we do know that the application is open. We have until September 30th to complete the application and create a budget. And then we have until September 30th of 2021 to spend it. So we got some flexibility. I talked to Chris today, and I think we will wait till we get in further into the summer to find out what our needs are, and if we have a better idea of whether we're going to start school or it's going to be online or a blended, what we get back in textbooks. So we've got some time and we've got some flexibility to spend that money. But again, this is a one-time expenditure, so they've encouraged us not to spend it on salaries and some other things, but technology needs, textbooks, those type of expenditures that we will need as we move forward is what we're looking at, I believe.
And I think, thanks, Mark. And I think some of this money can drive us toward an environment to where one-to-one students have devices, more access to internet, those types of things, because we don't know what next fall looks like. And our students, we can't hit the ground. We can't, hit a situation like this again and not be able to continue. So I think some of those dollars, again, we'll be working with the board to kind of focus on things that can help us through times like that we're currently in. So any questions about that money? All right, thank you for listening. And I just want to let you know, I put the Neola stuff in there. We're doing a first reading. I normally meet with the committee. Again, I'm trying to kind of reduce some of the things that you have to look through, but it did make for a bigger board packet. But if you had any real major questions or concerns about it, we do have another reading. So thanks for your patience with that.
Yeah, a slightly bigger board packet, 150 pages. I'm glad mine was digital this time. Thank you, Mr. View. Mr. Furman.
Thank you, Mr. Kuchar. Just a couple things as we wind down the school year. Like Mr. View said, we're working with the administrators to make sure that our evaluations are completed as we move forward that need to be completed. AP testing is coming up over the next couple of weeks. There will be a test in May, and then there is a makeup in June. I'll keep you updated. Our teachers have done a fabulous job of keeping our students informed and making sure that students have access to technology. And I will keep you updated on that process as we move forward. But that's it for me.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Furman. Any administrative staff like to report? No? Things are pretty quiet.
I'll just report that along with the district surveys that have went out, I'm going to send administrative surveys to parents, students. I'm going to send an all call out to let them know that that's coming out. It'll be on our website as well. So we'll get some feedback, from our parents, staff, students on the high school, the middle school administrative, things that they come up and everything like that. What else do we got going on? Working with Miss Palmerville on scheduling. We're working for the fall schedules and getting things all lined up for that. So that should be coming out by the end of this year. And then, yeah, just getting senior awards and trying to get this commencement stuff straightened out so that we can honor our kids the way that they need to be. So that's all from high school, middle school.
All right, thanks, Kyle. Mr. Sanford, Ms. Ross, anybody? No? All right. Did you have a committee meeting tonight or no?
No, we did not.
Okay, so no board committees. All right, brings us to the non-consent agenda.
I'd like to make a motion to adopt the resolution in support of the Bayer Neck ISD 2021 budget as presented tonight.
Support.
All right, we have motion support on the Bay Area Neck ISD budget resolution. Any discussion? All right, need a roll call vote, please.
Linda still on?
Mike Bauer,
Yes.
Nicole Jones,
Yes.
Chris Rabish,
Yes.
Paul Palmaville,
Yes.
Jared Clement,
Yes.
Linda Anderson, yes. Mark Kuchar.
Yes. Thank you. Motion passes. Next item.
I'd like to make a motion to accept the first reading of the Neola Policy Volume 34, Number 2, and the Special Coronavirus COVID-19 Policy Update as recommended.
Support. Support.
Again, we have motion and support. Any discussion on the matter? Seeing none, have a roll call vote, please.
Mike Bauer,
Yes.
Nicole Jones,
Yes.
Chris Rabish,
Yes.
Paul Palmaville,
Yes.
Jared Clement,
Yes.
Linda Anderson, yes. Mark Kuchar.
Yes. Thank you. Motion passes. We're on to public comments. I see Ms. Bowers is now with us. We have public comment at this time. If Ms. Bowers would like to put her microphone on and address us.
Tammy?
Jay, can you see if she has her mic on or?
It says she has it muted.
She says it won't turn on. Can you, I don't know.
She go on the chat.
Yeah, you can go into chat and make a comment, Ms. Bowers, if you want to type in something or see if you can get.
Hold on just a sec. I can try one more thing.
All right.
Is it smoke signals?
Give me just a sec here.
While Jay's doing that, is there any other public comment? Any other people from the community who have sent anything in or are online with us?
I'm having the meeting call out to her so she can answer the phone.
So she's left the meeting.
Probably to answer the phone.
To answer the phone.
Hello.
Okay.
Hello.
You're on with us, Ms. Bowers, if you want to address the board.
Yeah, I just, my concern is, I actually have two seniors actually. And my biggest concern is, well, up until like last week, my son was scheduled to deploy for the Marines. Now they have extended that time, but there must be other kids that have those kinds of plans. And I know there was one that they actually moved forward for him to deploy. So those kids are going to things, the kids that already have plans. So I guess I would like to know, is there something more we can do before the June 23rd date? Because yes, we do, kids reckon. However, some of these kids are ready to move forward. And I'm not going to hold my sons have done this. I'm not going to the house and let them sit in this house. I'm still going to work. Children. I work and still going to work. And I come home, but I'm not. We're at the point now, we've been in the house, army dropping, everyone's in the house. We be out. Yes, distancing, but we need to be out. I don't want my kids' immune systems to drop. So I told my we cannot move college, we are getting a job. They're old enough for them to there and learn things because this is going to be over in 2 months, 6. It could years. I'm going to allow them to put everything on hold, teach them to this new normal.
Okay. Your microphone is breaking up a little bit, but I got the gist of what you were saying. And that's something I hadn't considered. And I think we'll go ahead and we'll discuss that. Probably Mr. View and I, as we've kind of done before, about doing something of that nature. But we'll definitely address that. And I would agree with you that something needs to be done for people in that type of situation, and maybe give them an option to come in and get that diploma. So I thank you for bringing that up to us, and we'll see what we can do about that.
Okay. Thank you.
Is there, yep, you're welcome. Is there anybody else for public comment?
No, that's it.
All right, thanks, Jay. Discussion items.
Yeah, I
Anybody
got something.
Okay,
Mike, how hard would it be for us to put our top 10 on the marquee and then run all the seniors' names on it and let it come up and be on there for 4 or 5 minutes? So if these kids want to come up there with their parents, they could at least get a picture, in front of the marquee with the Pinconning logo, their name up there. It would be at least something for them right now. Is there a lot of work involved into putting their names up and letting it scroll across that marquee?
No.
It's possible there's a character limit, but I don't know for sure. That would probably be the only hindrance.
The one right out in front of Walmart or Paul?
What's that?
The one right out in front of the high school?
Yeah, if if you run the top 10 and then run everybody's name and just let it come up and be there for 4 or 5 minutes, and I think once the kids would see it, they could come up at any time with their parents. Maybe they could be in their cap and gown, they could get a picture taken. Yeah, it's not the same, but if something doesn't happen and it has to be virtual, at least they would have something, in front of the school with their parents, dressed in their cap and gown.
Okay. I mean, what time? What day, are you thinking here? Like after the 28th or before?
Well, I think Kyle said we can't bring them on to campus, so it would have to, it could be after that, but just something to recognize these kids wouldn't. We got to do something. Yep.
I think what we do, Paul, is once that's lifted, we could have something set up to have that marquee. I'm also talking with Craig Barnt, who runs the signs at both ends of the town, and maybe having just scrolling all the seniors through that, so people could see the names coming in and out of town. That's something Craig and I are going to be working on, but that could be.
Well, yeah, I would like to see all the kids' names, but put your top 10 first.
Yeah.
Because they deserve it. All the kids deserve it, but put the first top 10 up, and then you would still run those kids' names again that they're a graduate. But if you could put, number 1, and you could rank them, so people, that's a lot of hard work.
Yep, I agree. Okay, well, we can work on that for sure.
All right, thank you, Paul. Anybody else for any discussion items?
I would just like to say last week was Teacher Appreciation Week. And I know I appreciate all the things that the educators are doing in our district.
Mm-hmm.
And
Thanks, Chris.
Mark Kuchar, I think it's a good idea if we do a simplified evaluation of Mr. View with all what's going on right now.
I agree.
I also agree.
Gee, I agree too. Is that a vote?
Well, I agree with Chris because, you know, we're still sitting here and we're all together. Mike has kept us up to date on top of things. And if we could simplify this for all of our lives,
Mm-hmm.
I agree with Chris that we should make it a lot simpler.
I agree too.
Okay. I would like to get with Mike on the parameters. I guess I wasn't what was going on with that supervisory evaluation.
Yep.
Because I thought everything was suspended. My understanding with that executive order, I want to say number 35, I'm getting it mixed up now, is that all evaluations were off. But you're saying this new one, number 65 or 72 or whatever it is added something back in?
Well, they say it always said that there was no strict adherence. It didn't say there weren't. Trune is recommending that you do some sort of evaluation, but even the original executive order said that you didn't have to follow the strict guidelines of the evaluation. So, if by doing that, you could just simply, you could, like I'm going to do with some of the teachers and administrators, is basically deem them effective and look on to next year.
Yeah, and I know that's what they recommended for the teachers. So again, I want to look specifically at the wording, but yep. I'm going to guess that if we can do something is to just let last year's or the last 3 years or 10 years speak for themselves and give you an effective rating and move on till next year. So I guess unless somebody has something outstanding that they would like addressed with me, or Chris as part of personnel, get a hold of one of us and we can address that. But otherwise, I guess I want to go over the language specifically with you, Mike, and we'll see what we can do. But thank you for the input on that. Any other discussion items? All right, seeing none, I'll take a motion.
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Support.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Seeing none, we are adjourned. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
See you later.